Good morning and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good weekend and are ready to face the week. So some things to talk to you about this week. The very first to kick off with is something I actually spoke about last time, so you may already know about this if you listened to last week's weekly update, and that is about new abilities in Microsoft Graph for seeing and managing Teams devices. So I did talk about this last week a little bit, but I hadn't written it up as a blog post. I have now written it up. I know a bit more about it, and so I put a link to the blog post in the description. But kind of just to talk it through a little bit, there's some new functionality. It's shown up in the beta endpoint for looking at and managing Microsoft Teams devices. So it's things like room systems, it's things like Surface hubs, collaboration bars, Teams panels and displays, those kind of what they call low-cost phones, and SIP devices as well. And so depending on the device, you've got different types of functionality, but being able to get the health status, being able to get logs, being able to restart the device, being able to run diagnostics, remotely apply software updates, and then get a whole load of information about last use times, last login times, current state, current user, lots and lots of information available. I put it all together in a blog post, and yeah, so you can go and read that about the specifics of the permissions and the types of calls, and I've got all the links to all of the endpoints and what they all do. The interesting thing, I think, on that I put in the blog post is there's a message on all of these API endpoints around Teams devices that say that it's free for now. And what they specifically say is temporarily it's not being charged, but Microsoft expects to charge for use of some or all of these APIs in the future. This is Microsoft being very clear and saying we are going to charge you for using this API at some point in the future. And I think that's probably because if you ask them, and I haven't asked them, so I'm kind of guessing now. So this is not me knowing anything, this is me guessing. But I think if you were to ask them, they would say something along the lines of, well, you can do this stuff already via there's a Teams admin portal to manage devices already. So, we're going to charge because the people that would use this are likely partners who are building essentially competing products, or in some other way you're trying to do something that can already be done elsewhere. So that's the kind of model, that's the reasoning, I suppose, for charging, which I guess is true, although you could kind of apply that logic to any piece of the graph infrastructure, right? Almost all of it you can do elsewhere in some other way. So what's interesting as well is that it looks like they're using the same kind of licensing model as for the export APIs and the new change notifications. So that was some new API functionality that came in back end of last year, I want to say, and that also expects to be charged for as well. That made the way that was split up it was quite complicated, but there were two different models for licensing, Model A, Model B. Model A was meant for security and compliance devices, and there was an element of included usage in licensing, so E3, 5, I think licensing. You need to check all this because it's all changing all the time, and it's quite complicated. And then Model B is consumption only, but you can only write Model A applications if you're writing security and compliance applications. It's quite hard to see how these new APIs around devices would fall into a security and compliance category particularly. It feels much more like they're to do with asset management and IT administration. So it might be that they will never fall into Model A. They will always be Model B. That means that everybody will always pay consumption charges on them. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Maybe there'll be a Model C. Like I say, right now, these are all free to use. So make the most of them. And yeah, if you feel particularly strongly about whether these things should be licensed or whether they should be charged for or shouldn't be charged for, let me know. Let Microsoft know as well, because I'm sure they'd like the feedback also. So yeah. Interesting. I think it is interesting, actually, more broadly, how we're seeing a split between the parts of Graph that are free and the parts of Graph that will be charged for. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that evolves as well. All right, so I'm not going to go into loads of detail over that just because I did talk about it last week. This is me just sort of more formally writing it up and letting you know about it in case you missed it. All right, let's look at something else. So let me share my screen. And this is a great article, actually, sort of on the Microsoft 365 developer blog. And it's a series called Learn from the Community, which is highlighting work being done by others in the community to solve real-world problems on Microsoft Teams or on the Teams platform, or more broadly around Microsoft 365. This one is an academic thing, but it's got an awful lot of potential for lots of other organisations as well. There's a college in London, University College London, who wanted to track students and staff around in terms of engagement and attendance during kind of lockdown, when everything was remote and just kind of everybody was just trying to figure out what's going on and who was dropping out and who needed help and all the rest of it. So they came up with this thing. It's called Project Orca. Orca is online register for classes with analytics. Bit of a stretch, but go with it. Basically, it works with Microsoft Teams. It uses Microsoft Graph to find students' participation in lectures. There's a adapter for Moodle, which helps gather information about their activities. It all gets stored in SharePoint lists, and it all gets visualized through Power BI. So it's a really nice end-to-end kind of probably relatively low-coded solution. I think there's definitely code in there because you've got Graph there looking at participation in lectures. But it's a nice Azure-based kind of solution. It's an open source project as well. So if it sounds like exactly the sort of thing you've been looking for, go and have a look at it, because there might be things you can use in that. You might be able to take the whole thing and make it work for you as well. So yeah, there's lots of links at the bottom as well, which is nice. There's a link to the GitHub for the actual project itself. And then there's some good links to this Microsoft Learn and Microsoft Docs, really kind of covering the things that got done as part of this project. So I thought that was really nice. Great example of what can be done by putting together a couple of different strands around Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Graph, SharePoint, and Power BI, which is really nice. And actually leads me on very nicely. I hadn't thought this through very much, but actually leads on really nicely to my next topic that I want to talk about, which is another very nice integration between Microsoft Teams and sort of Power Platform and backend. Completely different set of tools, but solving a kind of not even a similar problem, but like the same kind of class of problem of just making it easier for users to get stuff done, which is kind of a really good place to be right now. And that is a open source project called ProvisionGenie, which came to my attention this week via the Microsoft Teams community blog. And this is a way of creating Microsoft Teams programmatically for users in a way that involves a bit more hand-holding than the standard creation mechanism. Puts a bit more guidance in place. And the reason I want to talk about this, there's two reasons. The first, it's open source, and that's amazing, and that's awesome. And the second, there's three reasons. Second, it's been put together by some excellent MVPs I want to call out, Carmen and Louise, which is cool. And then thirdly, I think it does it better than lots of other people have done it in the past, because it really tries to help the user and like train the user. So it's kind of a good mix of compliance, but also user adoption. So it's called ProvisionGenie. It lives inside Teams. It's actually a Power App that lives inside Teams, and it guides you through the creation process. But it's not just about what's the team name, what's the channel. There's a lot of stuff in here about, okay, well, what are you actually going to use this for? Okay, well, if you're going to use it for that, maybe you want some lists of things. Maybe you want to create some to-do items. And so you can create some libraries, you can create lists, you can, as you can see on the screen actually, custom columns for different things. You can build up what exactly these things are going to be for. And it really helps it helps you create teams the right way the first way, meaning that they're much more likely to get engagement that way as well. So I think this is very nice. I think it's very cool. The model, if you like the implementation model, is interesting. So it's like I said, it's a Power Apps Canvas app. The data is actually written to Dataverse and stored in Dataverse, and then kind of separate to that as an Azure Logic Apps instance, as a Logic app, which looks at that data in Dataverse and that actually does the real work, if you like, of creating the team, creating libraries and lists, adding people, and doing all the stuff under the hood. So I think this is very cool. It's nice. You can see this model. Actually, you can see how this could scale out really nicely. I wouldn't have any worries about putting this into a big enterprise because these parts will scale independently of each other. It looks really nice. So, congrats to Carmen and Luis. This is a super duper project, it's definitely worth checking out if you want to look at how your teams are created. If you want to do something but you're not quite sure what that something is, go and have a look at ProvisionGenie. It might have something in it that you need. All right, last thing I want to talk about, and this isn't strictly Teams dev stuff, but I've been through some other things that have been, so I don't feel too bad telling you about this one. It's kind of this falls into the category of like, this isn't really in my ballpark, but it's kind of interesting, and sometimes it's nice to kind of lift the lid on internally how Microsoft stuff works and how they do things. And it's not that often that you get a really good technical description, an explanation for how some of this stuff gets done. And so when it does come along, it is worth reading and it's worth digging into, because, the Microsoft folks are smart people. Like, they're smart developers and they're solving really hard problems around, in this case, how do we roll out and maintain an application at massive scale that is evergreen and stays up to date. So I'm talking about the Microsoft Teams Room application. So the thing that runs on Microsoft Teams Room apps, that's a hostile environment with devices being left on days at a time, not being used maybe for days at a time, randomly having to suddenly work, applying software patches over the air, lots and lots of different reasons it might go wrong. And in this blog post, they go through exactly how they built it. So they go through what's included. It's a UWP application, and as part of that UWP application, there's a Teams client, there's a Skype for Business client, there's a Teams Admin Center part, and there's a third-party meetings client part. And then looking at the Teams web app, they go into kind of details for how this works, how they validate features, how they roll out new updates, and kind of, it's nice just to kind of dig into some of the detail there on how they manage that stuff, how it all ties together, so it's good. The comments are really interesting as well, so go through the comments also. All right, I think that's everything I want to talk about this week. I spent some of last week putting together a video on something that's really, I think is really cool and is in preview at the moment, and I really want to tell you about, but it's proving really hard to actually produce the video because I've had to use a separate machine. So capturing the screen grabs off that machine is hard. It hasn't kind of worked first time. So I've got a whole collection of recordings. I need to stitch them together, and I haven't found time to do that. I hope I'll find time this week. It is worth waiting for, though, hopefully. Although by the time this video gets done, it might well be out of preview, but we'll have to see. But that's what I would hope to do this week if I can, along with lots of other exciting things that are coming. All right, have a good one this week, whatever it is you're doing. Have a great week, and I will talk to you again next time.